What's up, guys? Rae Reinhartz, Chaos Astrologer. So for the record, today is the 16th of January, 2020. And in recent times, I've done some transit talks about the recent lunar eclipse in Cancer and some of the, effects of that will be transpiring. And I was getting this intuitive sense that I'm kind of on a roll, and this is the season where my intuitive ideas are really flowing. To do some sort of informative video or lecture on Vesta, Ceres, and Hygeia, which are some astrological points used in more modern or current astrological theories. And when I started looking at some of the transits that were going to be transpiring, either right after this eclipse just happened, which was 6 days ago, and will start to align and manifest as time goes on through Aquarius and Pisces season for 2020, I noticed that there is some significant aspects with some of the major players with the lunar eclipse that just happened. Why do one of my cats always have to start playing with something and being annoying when I'm on camera? Anyway. So, as I was saying, we recently had the lunar eclipse in Cancer, and it was opposing the huge stellium going on in Capricorn, which is a huge significant transit with the Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter stellium. And I'm just going to kind of break down some of the major transit trends that will be ongoing from now all the way up to Aries season, and give you some kind of constructive advice on how to handle it. Obviously, everyone has their own individual circumstances, different ways that this eclipse and these energies will manifest in their lives. So if you're concerned about how this will affect you, or you need some sort of advice, you can always schedule a consultation with me, and we can discuss some constructive therapeutic ways for you to cope with this really eventful somewhat traumatizing event. So Aquarius Pisces season 2020. Let's start with the chronological order of all these major events. So during Capricorn season, which is right now, we had the Cancer Lunar Eclipse at 20 degrees of Cancer. It's conjunct the North Node, and it was opposing Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and within orb of the South Node. There's obviously Pallas and a couple of other points as well, but they're not as intense and drastic and extreme as Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter would be. So imagine this eclipse that just recently happened as an intervention episode. This is a great analogy going towards Pisces season as well, because Neptune's associated with drug abuse and all that. Anyway, so everybody, I would assume, if you haven't, go search on YouTube for an intervention episode. Intervention is obviously something that is beneficial for the person who's the subject of the intervention, but at the point in time, the person who is being succumbed to this intervention is deflecting blame, clinging on to toxic, destructive behaviors, and typically is unwilling to change. If they were willing to change, they wouldn't need the intervention. So this eclipse that just recently happened, because it was conjunct with the North Node, because there's these major players with this huge generational stellium going on, it is going to be like a symbolic intervention for everybody on some level, regardless of sociological themes, mundane themes, spiritual themes, psychological themes, emotional themes, something along those lines. So the eclipse and Pluto are both players with huge drastic transformation and extreme changes. With eclipses, it's forcing the change. Pluto is a relentless catalyst for change, but the fact that we have Pluto and the eclipse both having a hard aspect within this just exacerbates that intense, forced change, hence the intervention symbolism, or, metaphor. So there are two ways that you can handle this, and I'm talking on an individual level for each of you watching this. You can accept it easier said than done, of course. Or there will be significant amounts of people who will reject the crisis or urgency to change or address something in their life, as a lot of people tend to do. It's really easy to deflect blame. It's really easy to be in denial, and with other aspects going on, it's going to be even easier for people to lose touch with reality, even though that's been a thing for a long time. Neptune and Pisces, hello, and people continue to perpetuate their fantasies and denying any problems that are ongoing. So, one of the major aspect patterns that will be happening, that actually started just a couple days shy after this eclipse, is a grand trine with Uranus, trans Pluto, and the South Node. Trans Pluto is another point that I use. Obviously, it's like trans Pluto. It's one of like the Neptunian or Uranian points. It's the halfway point, or the plot twist before Pluto does its ultimate purging, destruction, rebirthing phase. So, with having the original aspect in question with Pluto opposing the eclipse, and then having a grand trine with Uranus to trans Pluto in the South Node, is so the eclipse told you there's something wrong. There's something you need to address. And it's like that itch that you can't scratch. This grand trine with Uranus, trans Pluto, and the South Node will continue on for the rest of Aquarius season and into Pisces season. And this is the momentum to the fire under your ass that will continue to nag you and push you to address these changes or this crisis that needs to be taken care of. So you can either transcend this crisis that's going on by addressing it, being aware of it, and making proper constructive changes, or you can lose your shit, because that's usually what happens. Cognitive dissonance, loss with reality, denial, etc., psychosis. So you can accept it, work on it. I mean, this transit's going to be difficult regardless which way you go. Depending on how much you want to struggle, and depending on how stubborn you are, unwilling to change. I'm looking at all you fixed element dominant people. Primarily, those are the ones that are the most difficult to get to cooperate. Then you can go ahead and lose your shit. That's basically what will happen. So, if you acknowledge this, there are some other major aspect alignments that will start to manifest in about 3 or 4 weeks from now, going towards when Mercury goes retrograde, for you to flourish from your potential efforts to address whatever crisis this eclipse has manifested in your life, or there will be some more nasty, hard aspect, major aspect patterns that will manifest and take precedence with you and whatever you're going through. So, let's say you acknowledgement happens, and you're embracing whatever you need to address. Then you look to the aspect between Hygeia, which is one of the trans-Neptunian and Uranian points for cleansing and purging and healing yourself. It will be trine to Saturn, Pluto, Mercury, Jupiter, the Sun, and Ceres. So Ceres has a lot to do with healing yourself. The Sun is yourself. Jupiter is a benefic or knowledge, bringing knowledge, conjunct with Mercury as your thought process and your methodical, perception. And then obviously Saturn and Pluto are the major players with the original aspect in question, the eclipse. So those are obviously, with Saturn and Pluto being present, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hardships. It's not going to be, a cakewalk by any means necessary. But the trine with Hygeia insinuates that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that there's potential for you to rise above this and transcend this and grow. Growing pains is definitely going to be evident, though. If you go the denial route, which will be very easy to do, especially as we go towards Pisces season, there's a nasty T-square. And when I say nasty, it's one of probably, if I were to spout off a theoretical nasty T-square in question, like one of the nastiest things I could possibly say. The only thing I would add to this is maybe Pluto or Saturn. Black Moon Lilith in Aries square Hades conjunct the North Node, square the South Node, and Mars. So Mars is your motivation. Being conjunct with the South Node is defensiveness or actions towards your old creature habits, your your self-sabotaging nature, things that you need to let go of, things that this eclipse essentially is telling you to let go of. Because with the nodes conjunct with the eclipse itself and with Pluto, that's Pluto's all about purging, and the Capricorn vibe is all about restrictions or elimination. So this T-square here will be the reaction response to those who are defensive, that refuse to acknowledge that there's a problem going on, that are being stubborn and refusing to grow or address their issues. So Black Moon Lilith in Aries, it'll also be within orb of actually it's conjunct with Chiron as well. So Chiron can be taken in two different ways. It's a double-edged sword. You can attain wisdom from the hardships that you have that you've endured throughout your life, and use your wisdom in ways to heal yourself and to accept things in your life, and then be able to use what you've learned to guide others or help yourself. Or you can use it as the Achilles heel reference, where it's a wound. It's a scapegoat for you to redirect blame, and for you to go poor me and be the victim. So this T-square will turn into, like, say there's somebody, like in the intervention example again. Say somebody is, Nino, knock it off. Stop it. Say somebody's trying to tell you to knock it off, like I just did to Nino. You can essentially, basically what will happen is that person will react viciously, violently, even in certain cases. Hades, representing like the dark associations, it's like a mixture of Saturn and Pluto, and it's got negative connotations to it as well, would be that the direction that you're going, because of this lack of acknowledgement with issues that's ongoing, is just going to perpetuate this toxic direction for yourself. Alienating yourself, burning bridges with people that are actually contributing positively to your life, that sort of thing as well. So that T-square is going to manifest as defensiveness and volatility, and people lashing out to anyone or any facets that are actually trying to help them to acknowledge whatever crisis is going on, or to help them grow and address some issues. So we have the either accepted or rejected manifestations with the transits that will influence someone. Then the great time for when this free will, this facet of free will comes into play, will be February 16th, 2020. That's the day that Mercury goes retrograde. When it goes retrograde, it'll be conjunct with Neptune. Mercury in Pisces, as well as Neptune, are people who manifest as someone who is more intuitive and has very abstract thoughts, lack of touch with reality. They're more in tune on a spiritual, intuitive level, as opposed to a methodical or rational kind of perspective. So when Mercury is in Pisces, rational thinking and being able to be objective, observing, and think through each steps of, how did I get to this point? What is causing this? How can I address this? What are the pros and cons? That kind of thought process is totally elusive to anybody with Mercury and Pisces. When it's retrograde, you can argue that sometimes it reverses that elusiveness or that clouded mind, or it just exacerbates it. In this case, with it being conjunct with Neptune, I would say it exacerbates it. Also, with it being in opposition with Trans-Pluto as well, and there being other aspects at play, the exacerbating of losing a touch with reality is going to happen. The good thing about this is that meditation will be easy to incorporate for a stress relief. Detaching yourself from mundane chaos will be easier. And if for some reason the crisis that's manifesting or being brought to light because of this eclipse and Pluto opposition, If it's spiritual or psychological or emotional, this is a great opportunity for you to address those things by looking inward. So, during this Mercury retrograde phase, it's very important for you to reflect and to not react. Not to interject, but to re-examine things. Go with your gut, as to a certain extent. Just don't make any huge life-altering decisions during this time. Not only is that a huge Mercury retrograde no-no, but just because of the lack of reality and the more or less shock phenomenon that's happening with people collectively, it's not good to make life-altering decisions in this case. So, during this Mercury retrograde phase, the Mercury retrograde will be sextile the South Node and trine the North Node. This is an emphasis of free will. So, there is certain aspects, obviously, and certain energies that are fated, that are synchronistic, that you can't avoid, that are going to manifest whether you want them to or not. But there is the free will factor involved with life and with any astrological manifestations. This sextile and this trine to the South Node and the North Node is an emphasis on this free will. So you reflecting upon what has been going on, what has been escalating since this eclipse happened on the 10th of January. What problems can I address in my life? Where am I unhappy? Where are there habits or behaviors that are sabotaging and no longer being constructive and serving me in my life? Where can I purge? Where can I burn bridges? Where can I redirect my energy? That's what needs to be addressed, and that's what you need to focus on during this Mercury retrograde phase. Will you choose to learn from past mistakes, Jupiter conjunct with the South Node, or change them with Mars trine Uranus? That'll happen towards the end of the Mercury retrograde phase. Or will you continue to perpetuate stagnancy and your denial with Black Moon Lilith conjunct with Chiron and Aries? Pluto is an antidote or a poison. It has all the planets and all the points have duality, because that's the free will and the yin and yang going one way or the other sort of thing. Use the Pluto energy to grow or let it destroy opportunities for transformation. So you can either let these Pluto aspects, these hard aspects, eat you alive, or you can go with the flow of this urgency to change and purge something and address what needs to be addressed. Pluto, trine to Hygeia. During some of this phase, it would be the aspect to clean up your act or be consumed by it. So again, going back to like the interventions metaphor, this would be go to rehab, get the help, or die from an overdose. That would be exactly the situation that could manifest. That goes back to the antidote and poison double-edged sword with Pluto. As Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter in Capricorn, the energy continues to manifest with that eclipse, the original aspect in question. Consequences and karma will follow suit for refusing to embrace the eclipse energy. Again, the trash will take itself out. It'll be resolved in some way, shape, or form. You're gonna completely alienate yourself, sabotage any potential, chances for growth and transcendence, and you're just gonna be eaten alive by your self-destructive habits. Then we look at some other interesting aspect patterns. We have the fortune aspect square this Mercury retrograde and then squaring the moon. So this is a T-square that will signify an unpleasant process to growth, major conflict with feelings and perception. So again, this goes back the great analogy with the intervention thing. The whole purpose of the intervention is for the subject's best interest, regardless if they feel that they have a problem, or regardless if they rationalize that they don't have a problem. There's a problem. So if you can step aside, rethink, reflect, and keep yourself from being impulsive and rash and just reacting off the fly to what's being presented to you, you have the opportunity to transcend this and manifest the good fortune point of this T-square. There will be a lot of urges to defy it, and plenty of people will go through the struggling phase throughout Aquarius season, and maybe even into Pisces season, depending on how warped their sense of reality and perception is. If you already have hard aspects with Neptune, or if you're already dealing with hard aspects like transit to natal radix with Neptune, then the denial route will likely be something that will be even more perpetuated throughout this time. Then we look at the Great Fortune aspect trine to Ceres. Ceres is a point where it's about healing the self and through knowledge and nurturing yourself and nurturing others. And with this trine to the Fortune aspect means that if you're able to work through this really tough T-square, that you'll be able to manifest great rewards for self-healing. So once you basically go through all the hard work, as a Saturn would say, and address your problems, change them, whatever, then you have the potential to reap the rewards later. Then we have Vesta trine to Jupiter. Vesta is another point that has to do with growth and healing as well. It also is present with endings and rebirths and deaths. So it does have some sort of Saturn-esque qualities, as well as being a manifestation of healing. And with it trine to Jupiter means that empowering the self to release all sabotaging elements of their current life. So this brings benefit to endings, primarily, is what that will manifest as. Then we have Chiron squaring the nodes. So Chiron's in Aries squaring the Cancer North Node and the Capricorn South Node. Will you heal and learn, or continue to live in the sick, sad world mentality? It's up to you. It's your choice. The free will phenomenon is still apparent. Again, for people who would like to address these things and are looking for some clarity, direction, or constructive, objective advice, this is the time to contact me for a consultation or reading. People who are curious to know what my rates are, we do a 40-minute astrological session and that's going to be $75. That's I'll send you like a preview briefing of an audio clip, as well as we'll have a live discussion after you've processed and kind of heard what I had to say in the initial briefing. And you'll get everything on a recording and stuff like that. If anybody wants to hit me up for a reading like that, just email me at raereinhartz@gmail.com and just ask me what's up. For my only other suggestions for people who are addressing their problems, who don't need help, want to know what they're getting into, what they're in for. Limit your exposure to volatile situations and unhinged people. These aspects, especially with the eclipse in question, is going to manifest all kinds of chaos and crazy shit happening. Shit is hitting the fan. This is definitely a transit event that would signify that. There's going to be sociological conflicts manifesting. The Iran issue, there's like the issue with the Democratic House and the Senate and all kinds of other things I could go on to. There's going to be a lot of conflict, hostility, and destruction going on and chaos going on. And then on a mental level, because Pluto has to do with the psyche and the moon has to do with your emotional well-being as well, and with Mercury retrograde being involved in this and being conjunct with Neptune, people are obviously going to be kind of batshit losing their minds. So reality is definitely not going to be your friend. People are going to be hysterical, cognitive dissonance, a personality conflict, and with Black Moon Lilith being conjunct with Chiron, and then having that nasty T-square with Mars and everything, people are going to be vicious, retaliate, impulsive, confrontational, aggressive, all kinds of stuff. So if you see somebody losing their shit, fucking walk away. Back away. Limit yourself to any people you know personally that are kind of, unhinged naturally, because it's going to be even more exacerbated at this point. And if for some reason you're the one that's unhinged or losing your shit, it's good for you to reflect, try some meditation, breathe, or avoid some situations, scenarios, or environments that antagonize you to lose your shit. Like, if you're going to continue to, let's say, let's be the devil's advocate for a second. If you're going to continue to perpetuate your denial, and there's a particular person or thing or environment that is what's calling to be changed or addressed, just for the respect and safety for everybody else that has to deal with you, you should probably just remove yourself from that. I don't like to say that in a way because that's enabling the denial and lack of accountability, but people are going to lose their shit whether they're transcending or if they're regressing in this case. So if you're losing your shit, give yourself some space, calm down, and block out any unnecessary external stimuli. If other people are losing their shit, walk away, come back another time, or readdress maybe perhaps if the connection or relationship you have with said individuals or whoever is even constructive, necessary, and justifiable in your life. Because that might be how this would manifest as well. That maybe you need to let go of some toxic people that are holding you back or weighing you down or causing all kinds of unnecessary stress and chaos to your life. Yeah. Other than that, do some painting, go see an art gallery, do interpretive dance, learn some yoga, do some meditation, chill the fuck out. And don't make any permanent life-altering decisions, and count to 10 before you react to anything. And be aware and acknowledge that you may not be perceiving everything exactly as it is, and reality is definitely not your friend at this time. Because thinking back to when we're thinking about shock, when somebody's in shock, you see somebody in shock from physical trauma, emotional trauma, psychological trauma, even spiritual trauma when you're going through a painful enlightenment phase. Shock is somebody who's disoriented, lack of reality, irrational, they're erratic, their adrenaline's high, they're reacting on survival instincts as opposed to, intellectual, conclusions, that sort of thing. So there's no talking somebody down, there's no, don't even try. If you see somebody being batshit, don't even try to rationalize with them. Don't even try, because especially with that T-square with Black Lilith and Mars, you trying to rationalize things or talk them down might actually just escalate their crazy behavior. Yeah. But anyway, I figured I would share that. Felt that was kind of important to address. And again, this is ongoing at this moment from the 16th of January 2020, and this will continue to escalate into Aries season. I didn't actually fast forward into Aries season to see if any of this more is going. I know it will, especially the whole confrontational thing. Aries season's notorious for that, and with Black Lilith being in Aries at that point, conjunct with Chiron, it's just going to be exacerbated with people being martyrs or people playing victims or lashing out and saying, you did this to me first, or blah, 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 blah. Like, a great example of that would be Elizabeth Warren with Bernie Sanders in the Democratic debate the other night, how whoever spun that, Bernie Sanders is sexist, and then she went up and tried to act like she's the victim, even though she's the one that perpetuated this story and enabled this to happen. So she brought this all on herself. And at the end of it all, she was acting like she was outcasted or targeted for unjustifiable reasons. That's a great example of how that T-square will manifest in people's lives. And confrontations that will follow suit because of their delusion. And in all honesty, I didn't even fast forward through Aries season because I figured it was just going to continue to escalate. But, I don't really have any constructive anything besides avoid bullshit that's not necessary, with the escalation factor manifesting into actual conflict and fights and stuff. But giving a warning and hopefully finding people who will heed my warning about the build up to this explosion that will happen is right now. So yeah. Anyway, that being said, good luck, guys. Sorry I didn't have any better news, and yeah. Brace yourselves and stay strong.